You've said that the number one thing that people come into your office for is they want more energy and they don't want to be quite as fatigued. And so where do you start within your practice figuring out what the problem is?
That's a great question. Hippocrates said 2,500 years ago that all disease begins in the gut. And he didn't have any of the sophisticated tests we have now. I don't know how he knew it, but he was absolutely right. And thanks to some of my work by Dr. Alessio Fasano, who's now at Harvard, who actually proved for the first time that certain foods, certain proteins called lectins, he was focused on gluten, actually attack the wall of our gut and actually cause the little things that bind our gut cells together, tight junctions, to break and to actually cause spaces between the walls of our gut where not only can foreign food particles come through, but also bacteria. And as I wrote in the last book, The Energy Paradox, this creates inflammation locally in our gut. 80% of all of our white cells literally line the intestinal wall. 80%.
Oh my God.
And they're there because that's kind of our border, if you will, with the outside world. And normally that border should be impenetrable, but it's only one cell thick. We have kind of a design flaw, and that the space, the length of our intestines is actually the same as a tennis court. So, when we're watching the Australian Open, for example, that tennis court is inside of us, and it's only one cell thick. So anything that can kind of get through that, thin membrane, our immune system goes, oh my gosh, we're under attack. And we need all the energy that you have to fight this war that's you may not even feel. Now, most people feel it by, fatigue or, other, believe it or not, I see so many, particularly women, with depression and anxiety, and they don't have a clue, unfortunately, that this is actually happening because of this war that's starting down in their gut. You guys have taught me so much, women, because you guys thankfully have a gut feeling, and men, and quite frankly, most medical people have poo-pooed that feeling that women have. Luckily, I have a wife, 2 daughters, and 3 female dogs. So I
Passion.
And luckily I've learned that women have this sense that we should pay attention to. And for the last 20 years, I've been urging women in particular to please keep looking for a healthcare provider who will take your complaints seriously. And once people start doing that, once I started saying, gee, that's, are you sure that that's going on? And I started looking at the blood work and I go, oh, son of a gun, you're right. And let's fix it.
I mean, I can completely attest to that. I think that maybe what could be said is not only to find a practitioner that takes you seriously and is willing to explore what it is that could be causing this, what some may think is imaginary symptom,
right?
But also to you yourself, that person out there, to take your symptoms seriously, to take your intuition seriously. Probably 2018, I remember thinking to myself, like my body had shifted a little, I gained a couple of pounds out of nowhere. And I was like, man, this is so weird. And nothing I did made a dent on it. And I was like, maybe it's just I need to try harder. Maybe it's just age. Maybe it's just that. But my intuition said my hormones are off. I probably should check them. Fast forward now into the end of 2020, I had another shift like that. And I was like, okay, this is not okay anymore. And I'm one of those people that does have great energy. And so it's not as easily noticed in my world. But then I finally went in and I had a slew of things, including leaky gut, including dysbiosis, including heavy metal toxicity. I mean, just tons and tons of stuff. Thankfully, I felt decent, but the ultimate shift for me was I finally had cycle issues. And then I was like, well, I guess I should probably do something about this. So I think that, yes, following that intuition and getting in touch with the body and trusting that is a really important thing. So do you find that food is the number one culprit?
Yeah, Hippocrates also said, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food.
He was smart.
Man, I don't know how you figure all this out, but yeah, so that's, I guess, what made me famous is that a lot of the healthy foods that we think are good for us actually contain mischievous little proteins that are the defense system of the plant against being eaten, which are called lectins. And lectins bind to the wall of our gut, and they actually flip a switch that breaks these tight junctions. And the object of the game for a plant is not to be eaten and to make sure that its babies don't get eaten, its seeds. And their only defense against being eaten is to try and make their predator, in that case us, not feel well when we eat certain plants or plant babies. And the object of the game is a smart animal. If it doesn't feel well, or if it's not thriving, or even if it's not reproducing, the animal says, every time I eat this plant or this plant baby, I don't feel very well. I think I'll go eat something else. The plant wins, the animal wins, everybody's happy. Humans, as we all know, are pretty stupid. And so when we eat things that we have an intuition or we can feel that something's not right, we take Prilosec OTC or Tums or Nexium. We take antidepressants, we take Aleve, Advil. And this actually, as I write in all my books, makes things worse rather than better. The other thing that I think is really important that I wrote in the last book, particularly, is we have amazing gut dysbiosis now just because of two things. Number one, the antibiotics that we take for whatever. You couldn't believe the number of people who have been given antibiotics for COVID-19, which they don't work. It's a virus, folks. Number two, antibiotics are fed to almost all of our conventionally farmed animals. And we use them to make these animals grow quicker and faster and fatter. And so, So when we eat these animals, we actually are eating the antibiotics that are in their flesh. And so unbeknownst to us, those antibiotics kill off our gut microbiome. So rather than having this intense, beautiful, diverse tropical rainforest of tens of thousands of species of bacteria in our gut, many of us, for instance, after a course of antibiotics, you may be reduced to 1 or 2 bacteria out of 10,000, and it may take 2 to 3 years to get that back.
No, don't say that.
Yeah, it's unfortunately true. I mean, think about it. If a forest burns down and we run in there and we plant little seedlings, it's going to take 20 or 30 years to get that forest back. And so we've been really naive that, I can take, some probiotics the next day and I'll be back to normal. And fortunately, you got to build this ecosystem in your gut.